So thank you for being here for those of you who are. Again, this is a completely optional session for all of you. And I just want to give a little disclaimer to this and any future talks that I give. They all come from personal experience. They are highly biased. There is no, they are not definite answers about life questions or shit like that. So they are highly subjective. I may use the rhetoric of security and provide some sort of logical evidence or logical conclusion to things and connections and things like that. But that doesn't make it absolute truth. So always question everything that I discuss, especially this, because these are very personal talks. So today, the talk is the key to growth. At least that is what I want to talk about. And this is, if you were with me last semester, something that may seem very familiar. I will start discussing, first of all, what is an adult. In one of my lectures, I discussed how age in itself is pretty ambiguous because there is a social age and a psychological age and things like that. But overall, we would say that somebody that is an adult would be somebody that is autonomous, making their own decisions, etc., etc. Notwithstanding, I do believe that many of us start making decisions since we are 12. You start deciding how to dress. Some of you even decide what high schools you attend. And if that is not the case, you're probably going to be deciding what colleges you're going to. That makes you that I don't think that that makes you an adult. And then other people believe that being an adult means that you start working. Some people would say that, oh, when you got a job, that makes you an adult. But to be honest, some people start working at the age of 14, 15. Probably at McDonald's or Starbucks or Subway or whatever, a part-time job here and there. That does not really make you an adult. And then there are people who have full-time jobs and they are incapable of making any decisions on their own. Their parents are still deciding for them much of the things, even if the job that they are taking is for them. So I could claim that that does not really turn you into an adult. Others would say, oh, well, you could say that you're an adult if you start your own family, right? Have your own children. Again, you can, and it happens in Mexico and in many countries of the world. Some people start having children at the age of 11, 12, 13. In Mexico, I believe that legally you can already get an INE, the identification for adults of the country, quote unquote, adults of the country, if you have children, no matter the age, right? So if you're 13, you have your own children, then you are qualified to have your own INE. So legally, you are a citizen, yes. Legally, in theory, you are an adult, but I would put into question, what if you have children? It doesn't matter if you're 13 or you're 30. What if you have children, but you still live with your parents? And your parents are the ones paying for everything. Then can we really call you an adult? And the standard is in the discussions to believe that adults are people over the age of 18. Because you can drink, you can smoke, you can, I don't know, buy a house or shit like that, I guess, if you have money. But psychologically speaking, I read somewhere a while ago that you are not considered an adult until you leave the nest, meaning that you stop depending on your parents. And particularly in Mexico, that is problematic when you find out that many 30-year-olds still live with their parents. And they still live with their parents because it's comfortable, right? And some would say, and they're probably right, partly right, that it is very difficult to buy your own house, or the living expenses of the country are complicated. And that is partly true, but it is also kind of an excuse, right? If you wanted to, you could move on and do your own thing. So I want to talk a little bit about that, about the key to growth, or what I believe to be the key to growth. To do that, let's start learning a little bit, or thinking a little bit about what makes something grow. In the case of plants and animals, it's nourishment, and plants is sun, the elements, the water, right? So you need the necessary things for survival. In the case of humans, we're a little bit more complex, so we need clothing, we need food, we need shelter, we need to be healthy in many other ways, and we get that. We get all of these things many times from our parents, which creates this dependent relationship with our parents in itself. So, to talk a little bit about what really makes you grow as a person, and in this sense, I talk about it psychologically, socially, emotionally. I need to talk about geography, which is a weird segue, but bear with me. Again, these are mere observations. I actually think that this reflection came to me it's not an original idea. It's something that one of my professors pointed out when I was studying my master's, and I thought very interesting. And I said, I'm going to replicate this to my students. Let's see what they think. When you look at the map of the world, and you will think about the places with the richest ecosystems, with the most food or more variety of food, with the better conditions for life, well, those countries will probably be around the center of the map, right? Mexico, it's actually very, very rich in resources, the forests and everything. And then you have the islands in Caribbean and many other places. Africa, yes, there is a big desertic area there, but there are also areas that are rich in resources for mining and for many other things. And yet, when you think about the world's biggest economies, they're not here. Matter of fact, they have all the resources here, but the really biggest economies of the world, they're actually the majority of them in this little stripe, right? Between the Tropic of Cancer and the northern part of the world. And when you think about it, in Mexico, we don't even know what winter is. Like, we complain that 0 degrees, which is super cold, when in parts of North America and Europe, they complained about minus 20 degrees, which is a big difference. Like, think about 20 degrees in difference. Think about being at 6 and 26 degrees, like that much of a difference between their cold and our cold. Not only that, personally, I have never seen snow in my life. I just haven't, right? These countries are covered in snow when the winter comes. Not only that, when winter comes, that also means that snow coverage means no food, really, no resources, not enough things. And yet they are the ones that are growing the most. So there is a geographical challenge where everything that you need is just not there. And my claim is that that is exactly why these countries are thriving economically. Because when you don't have enough resources, you need to think, what can you do to survive? They are pushed into thinking, into creating science. They are pushed into being ingenious in their economic systems, distribution of power, wealth, and many other things. To further my evidence, I go from geography to history. We had the Middle Ages, where we call them the Dark Ages, thinking that ideas were stagnant. That is kind of a myth, right? Like, there were things being created, being made. There was art being made during the Middle Ages. But it was a very slow pace of things, like, and many would blame religion. We could blame endless amount of things. I'm not going to go into details with that information. what I want to point out is that by the end of the Middle Ages, there was a big problem in Europe that killed 30 to 60% of the population of Europe. The Black Plague, that is correct, the pest, right? Like the pestilence that just like you would go in the street and people would randomly die. 1 in 3 people, or sometimes 2 in 3 people that you met would be dead. Your family were 6, you were probably going to be 2 by the end of the year. That's brutal, isn't it? But what happens right after the Black Plague? The Renaissance. It is after the worst conditions that Europe has had that we had an explosion of ingenuity, science, social change, and so on. Now, I'm not saying that the Black Plague is the sole reason behind this, but I do believe that this correlation is not mere coincidence. It is because of the horrible conditions that people needed to change in order to survive. But I'm not here to talk about humanity overall, although we have to admit that right now we are in crisis mode. There are economic crises, social crises. We have problems with the climate, right? Climate change and all of these things. So it seems like the world is on the brink. I actually think that we still need to really hit rock bottom to be able to get out. At the end of the day, this talk is not really about Earth, is it? It's about you as people, individuals, humans. I'm going to talk a little bit about my Black Plague. That Black Plague was called independence. Being on my own for the first time in my life without a safety. When I was 18, I was sick and tired of living with my dad and with his wife because I didn't like his wife and my dad was pretty much negligent. So I felt trapped, alone. I felt uncomfortable in my own house. So I said, fuck it, I'm tired of it. So I went and moved in with my grandma. Terrible idea. Using a safety net, terrible idea. After being a month with my grandma, I was like, I'm done, I cannot do this. And I called my dad, I apologized and I said, can I get back home? And I went back home, but I had already lost my closet because my stepmother took it over. She moved some things away, but I mean, that happened. So at the age of 19, a few things happened. A short summary is my grandma died. My dad inherited money. He bought a new house. He was moving away. And I said, I cannot move to this new area where he's going with them. So I got a job and I say, I'm going to pay rent. I got 2 of my friends as roommates. And my job paid me 2,600 pesos a month. Which is not a lot. It's like if right now you got paid 4,000 pesos a month. And my rent was between my rent and the bills, electricity, gas, and all those things, I was spending 2,000 pesos of my 2,600 pesos. So I had 600 pesos to survive. I'm paying for my college, by the way. A public university, but still it's 1,000 pesos a semester. So I needed to save 100 pesos of the 600 pesos I got every month. So technically I had 500 pesos to live. When my dad moved away, I was 80 something kilos. That was my weight. And this is a photo 3 months later. I lost 20 kilos in 3 months. And I will talk about the diet that led me to that in a little bit. But I learned something that I already knew. And this is the thing about this crisis, about these growth moments. Many of these things you already know, but you don't truly understand them. You don't truly integrate them into your life. Conviction was the first thing I learned. Conviction is powerful. I was convinced that I did not have an option of going back to my parents, to my dad, to be specific. I was convinced that I had no other choice but to make it on my own. So I was hungry and tired all the time. But since I did not have an option and I was convinced of what I was doing, I felt happy. He's not sad. He's thriving. I was thriving. I was happy. I was happier than I had been for years, to be honest. Because conviction is powerful. Conviction will make your stomach feel very empty. Sometimes you're shaking with hunger, and yet you're walking to your job. You're tired enough that you look at the floor and it looks like the most comfortable bed in the world. Or you just get home without taking off your shoes, you just lie in your bed, fall asleep, and wake up 8 hours later not knowing what happened. That is how I was feeling back then. But the conviction was more powerful than hunger or tiredness. Sick days are work days, ladies and gentlemen. If you're only getting 2,600 pesos a month, not working a day means not eating for a day or two. So you push through. Sickness is not gonna get the best of you, because if you're convinced, you're strong enough to overcome that. Second thing I learned, appearances matter a lot. I was the kind of guy that would defend with to anyone the idea that if somebody loves you, they need to love you for who you are inside, not for how you look outside. That is very romantic and everything, but it's a stupid thing. It's a stupid bullshit that we tell ourselves to idealize things. A book is not judged by its cover. I'm sorry, but it is. When you go to a library, you don't read the book before you buy it. You look at the cover and you make a decision to buy the book. If it's a shitty book, that's terrible. If it's a good book, that's great. But the cover matters. So if you want to move forward in your life, to get more opportunities, to have people take you seriously, or to be attractive enough for a partner, you need to match your inner beauty with your outer appearance. Otherwise, it's pointless. Because you get what you give. If you give bare minimum to yourself, people are going to give you bare minimum. That's how they're going to treat you. And the whole idea of if they love me, they will see who I am inside. I'm a nice person. It was just to cover a lack of self-esteem. I was not willing to invest in myself. Why would anybody invest in me? I still have self-esteem issues, but at least I try to hide them now, I guess. Third thing I learned, money matters. Because money is time. Being paid to 2,600 pesos a month means that I was being paid about 80 to 90 pesos a day. That means that I was getting paid about 18 pesos an hour. So my time was worth 18 pesos an hour. That's a very low price. And then spending, I don't know, 100 pesos in going to the theater, is it worth spending 5 hours of my life for 2 hours of entertainment? And when you start measuring things that way, you start valuing things differently. A shitty movie, not worth a day of saying, gracias por llamar a Telcel, atiende Jorge Cepeda, con quien tengo el gusto, over and over again, sometimes 100 times in a day. Definitely not worth watching, what was it back in the day? Little Fuckers, that was one of the movies. I remember going there and actually falling asleep during the movie, because again, hungry and tired. Money cannot buy happiness, but you cannot be happy without it. If you don't have a roof over your head, food in your stomach, and the ability to just survive in the world, it's not possible to be happy. You will have moments of joy, but true happiness takes money. And it definitely feels different if you understand both of these things. If you really understand both of these things, it's not the same to get 1,000 pesos that you work hard for than get 1,000 pesos that you didn't work for. Money becomes pointless if it is given to you. If you earn it, then it has a meaning. And the fourth thing I understood is that planning is really important. Because how do you survive with 500 pesos a month for buying food for the entire month? Is what was it, like 20-30 pesos a day? Well, I survived on a diet for 3 months before I got a pay raise. I survived on a diet of a maruchan and a sandwich a day. That's how I lost 20 kilos. I don't recommend the diet, by the way. Maruchan and a sandwich a day is brutal. Sandwich was for breakfast, maruchan was for dinner. From time to time, a friend would buy me something, but from time to time, friends assaulted my fridge, which was a pain to go through. I got angry with friends one time for that. They basically took all my my loaf of bread. They finished it. And I was like, dude, you live with your parents. Like, why did you do that to me? Anyway, good planning allowed me to basically survive. And I kept that planning going for many things in my life. That's how right now my wife and I were able to buy a house. That's how we went to Europe and many other things. It started with a necessity of planning. We would go to the supermarket and I would know by the cent how much money I was spending before paying for everything. I would calculate that in my head. And there was a time, this is one of my favorite things that happened. A friend of mine, one of my 2 roommates, we were all poor, by the way. We were all living under this same conditions. But he had made a commitment before he moved in with us to host some people that were coming for a conference in his university. So we were 7 people having dinner and we had 20 pesos to feed all 7 people. That was beautiful. I dare you to try it. Counting for inflation, think that you need to feed 7 people with 40 pesos. Let's say 40 pesos. I learned how to cook. That day I learned how to cook. That day I learned how to, and we ate to our fill. We actually had leftovers. It was beautiful. 20 pesos can't feed 7 people if you know how to plan that. These were my friends back in the day. And I don't talk to some of them nowadays. In this picture, some of them, as far as I know, still live with their parents. They're not happy with their jobs. They're not happy with their lives, actually. Many of them, I believe, have depression or anxiety. I am very happy with my life. And I know for a fact that if I had stayed with my dad and do what was more comfortable, even though it was annoying, wouldn't have made me look for opportunities of growth. Wouldn't have helped me develop my ingenuity, my planning skills. Wouldn't have allowed me to understand the real value of money. I don't talk to many of them for a reason nowadays. Probably we became very different people. They are afraid of leaving their parents' house because they're very comfortable. I'm not saying that's the only reason why they hate their jobs or that they have depression or anxiety. And I have suffered depression and anxiety. And there are things in my life that I wish to change. The difference is that I do things to change my life. I cannot say the same for them. We're almost 40, all of us in this picture. And I don't think many of them are going to learn the lessons I learned when I learned them. Because there's a point in your life when you just give up on learning new things. You conform to how life is going to treat you with emotions and things where it takes you. I'm not asking you guys, and I'm not suggesting in any way that at the age of 19 or before you move away from your parents' home, because that would be ridiculous. Finish your degrees. Get your paper. And when you get your first job, get the fuck out of your parents' houses. It's gonna be difficult. You're gonna get hungry. You're gonna get tired. You're definitely not gonna have the lifestyle that you imagined you would have, where you can go and get a Starbucks every day. But you're gonna grow because you need to go through shit. And I wish that you go through shit so you can become a better version of yourself. Anyway, that's it for my talk.